Welcome back. We're taking a look at WTI crude oil futures down to about $94 a barrel. Keep in mind that they had a very recent closing high of $123.70, which means that we would be in bear market territory. That's a decline of more than 20% if WTI settles at below $98, which it is right now. So we'll have to monitor that going into the afternoon. But again, on watch for bear market territory in WTI crude oil. Now, obviously, higher oil prices are posing a political challenge for the Biden administration, with some proposals for a windfall tax on oil companies under the framing that the likes of Exxon and other companies are unduly profiting off of higher oil prices. So the question, though, is whether or not it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And for more on that, we'll bring in Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman, who's looking into this a little bit more deeply. Obviously, Rick, a policy conundrum for Democrats, but how's the messaging, at least from the left so far?
Well, Democrats are basically trying to say we're aware of the problem and we have ideas for what to do about it. It's just that their ideas are not very good, and there really is probably not much Democrats can do about this. So this one idea that popped up in Congress recently, this seems to come around every time oil prices go close to $4 or more, is a windfall tax on big oil companies like Exxon. But the problem with a windfall tax is, well, you'd be raising the costs for oil companies at a time when you're actually trying to lower energy costs. So you'd probably be counterproductive if you did that. And those higher costs, those drillers would just try to pass those costs along. The idea is that if you raise this money through the windfall tax, you could then send rebates out to drivers to compensate them for higher gas prices. But every idea I've seen, mostly Democratic ideas to solve this problem of higher oil and gas prices, they just ignore the economic fundamentals that are really driving prices right now. And the thing people need to know is, while we had fairly low gas prices from 2015 to 2019, drivers loved it, gas around $2, $2.30 a gallon, there was carnage in the U.S. energy industry. There were more than 600 bankruptcies during that time because a lot of these firms overinvested. Those 600 firms defaulted on something like $320 billion in debt. They overinvested, which brought more supply into the market and brought prices lower, so they couldn't make a profit. And the industry learned from that. And so even though we're seeing prices that were above $100, but now I guess are not, you are not seeing drillers here in the United States flocking to drill more wells because they know the price could just come back down and they're going to lose money all over again. So you really can't change the economic fundamentals here by some policy in Congress.
You know, Rick, you're talking, I mean, that's a really interesting point you bring up about the supply side of things, but isn't there also kind of a demand dynamic here? Because if you were to offer some sort of rebate, or if you tried to slash, for example, the federal gas tax, if it makes it cheaper, then maybe there would be actually higher demand for gasoline, right? Which might further push prices up. So how does that dynamic play into all this political calculus as well?
Right. So this would be unintended consequences. And, you know, we've seen this many, many times. In fact, when gas prices get high enough, gas and oil prices, I should say, or energy prices overall, they can cause a recession. And then the recession itself is the thing that brings oil and gas prices back down because demand plummets. I mean, that's what we saw in 2020. You know, everybody seems to forget that there was a short period of time in 2020 when oil prices here in the United States actually went negative. That was because there was way too much supply and a sudden plummeting in demand, and you had to actually pay to store oil because nobody would buy it for a short period of time. So, you know, drivers tend to forget that. But if you're in the industry and you lost your shirt or your company in 2020, you remember that very clearly, and you're going to be really careful going forward about overinvesting.
Yeah, that was a really crazy story that I feel like people forgot about. Negative oil prices in 2020. Again, that's definitely going to be in the history textbooks. Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman. Thanks so much for the breakdown there.